Today we're going to make one of the most essential holiday drinks, eggnog. This recipe was inspired by Josh Weissman's eggnog recipe, so I'll link his video in the description below, but of course I've made some modifications to it to improve upon it even further. This recipe might seem a bit intimidating at first, but it's really not too hard, and once you see just how much better it is than store-bought eggnog, you'll see that it's worthwhile to make it yourself. So let's get right into it. The first thing you need to do is just heat up 4 cups of whole milk, preferably in a heavy pot like a Dutch oven, because we'll need to have pretty good control over our temperature during this recipe, and a heavier pot will help with that. You don't need to boil or even simmer it, just let it heat up a bit to about 160 degrees Fahrenheit if you're using a thermometer. Which I highly recommend, by the way, not only for this recipe, but it also makes deep frying so much easier when you can monitor the exact temperature of your oil. So as the milk is heating up, we're just going to need to whisk together 8 egg yolks along with 3/4 of a cup of sugar. I'm using the technique that Josh used in his video to remove the yolks, which involves cracking them into a separate container and fishing them out with my hands. This method ends up being a lot quicker and more effective for removing the yolks than separating them one at a time. So once you have all of the yolks separated, just gradually add your sugar little by little as you continue to whisk. You'll want to whisk until the mixture turns significantly lighter in color, which indicates that you've got some good aeration going on. When whisking, I always use a side-to-side motion rather than a circular pattern or figure 8 because it applies the most shear force to whatever you're whisking. America's Test Kitchen did a test of several different whisking methods, and the back and forth pattern achieved far better results than any other method. So assuming your milk is sufficiently heated by now, start incorporating it into the egg mixture 1 ladleful at a time. We basically just want to bring the yolks up to temperature so they don't curdle when we add them to the hot milk. So do that a few times, stirring between pours before adding that entire mixture back into the pot with the milk. Now I'll just add some crushed cinnamon sticks and cloves. In order to get the freshest and best possible flavor, I recommend using whole spices, so I used a mortar and pestle to crush 2 cinnamon sticks, along with 1 heaping tablespoon of whole cloves. You don't need to break them down too far since they'll get strained out eventually anyways, but we're really just trying to increase their surface area to help them release their flavors. So in addition to the cinnamon sticks and cloves, you'll just want to add 2 teaspoons of a good quality vanilla extract, along with 1 whole nut of nutmeg. There will be a lot of nutmeg in this recipe, so it's important to use whole nutmeg and grate it yourself if you want the best possible flavor. It's really not too expensive, and you'd be surprised how far a single nut of nutmeg will actually go by the time you grate it. Now just stir your mixture and keep it on low heat for about 20 minutes until it's nicely thickened. Make sure to keep it below a simmer and stir frequently to ensure that the eggs don't curdle. You can ruin it pretty easily if the mixture gets too hot, so just be patient here. If you're using a thermometer, try to keep the temperature between about 170 and 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the mixture has thickened to the point where it coats the back of the spoon, it's time to remove it from the heat and strain it through a fine mesh strainer into a bowl, hopefully struggling a bit less than I did. It would help if you had another person to hold the strainer steady as you pour. Then just use a rubber spatula to make sure you get every last bit of eggnog into the bowl. If you'd taste the eggnog at this point, you could tell that the spices already infused a good amount of flavor into it, but we do want to add just a bit more spice now to finish it off. The spices may leave a bit of sediment, but that's why we added the crushed spices at the beginning and strained them out, because now we only need to add a bit more spice to get the flavor we're looking for. So just add 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1 tablespoon of ground ginger, and somewhere between another 1/2 to 1 whole nut of grated nutmeg, depending on how nutmeggy you like it. Now, if you're making a non-alcoholic eggnog, just stir in 1½ cups of heavy cream. Otherwise, stir in 2 cups of heavy cream, along with a 1/2 cup of brandy and a 1/2 cup of either dark rum or bourbon. Personally, I prefer rum in mine, but I'd recommend trying it both ways and seeing which one you like better. Now, if you want to drink the eggnog right away, which you probably will, you can cool it quickly by placing your bowl of eggnog into a larger bowl filled with ice water for about 10 minutes, stirring occasionally. It's important to have your eggnog in a metal bowl here, because it'll transfer the heat more efficiently, which will cool the eggnog a lot quicker. If you try to do this using a plastic bowl, it won't really work too well, and at that point you'd be better off just throwing it in the fridge. So that's all there is to it.
Let it snow, let it
Eggnog is a really great, comforting drink for the holidays, and I guarantee that this will be some of the best you've ever had.